Hi all, welcome in next video of WebAPI. Okay, so in last video we have worked in creating a delete method and get user details method. Okay, and we also discussed about the what are the HTTP hooks and what are the lifetimes. Okay, so I hope you guys have understood those things. Those things were actually pure technical and pure from the .NET Core background. Okay, so in this next video we will be discussing about like using a stored procedure, and further we will be implementing that stored procedure in post action method. Post action method means we are going to create a user using our APIs. So currently through the API we are able to get the user details and we are able to delete the user. Okay, but we are not have a functionality to create a new user. Okay, so how it would be working, like end user or client will be providing some user details, and based on the user details we will be accepting the data and creating the data into the database, and whatever the expected user ID is coming, we will be sending that user ID to the end user or client. Okay, so that functionality we are going to implement. So for this implementation we are not going to use the inline query, because inline query we can use, but that would be like more appropriate and is not good for implementation. Okay, so we will be creating one stored procedure. So based on the stored procedure, like we will be executing the query, we will be taking the inputs, and based on the inputs the execution will get completed and user will be inserted to the database. Okay, so you can see okay, so first thing, like TNS listener issue. So I'm frequently facing in Windows 10, like TNS is automatically not getting up or in booking and running in 18C. I don't know why. It is some Windows 10 updates issue or something. So I'm facing that issue. So I thought like you guys are also facing some issues. So that's why I picked up this issue and trying to understand why it is happening and how we can come up the solution. Okay, and the next thing, like we will be implementing the stored procedure as I told you, and further we will be implementing that stored procedure with a post action method. Okay, and using that post action method we will be inserting user data into our database. So for that definitely we would need to create one separate request and separate response. So request will be coming from the users and the response will be going through from the API. Okay, so this TNS listener issue I'm telling about you. Okay, so this is coming frequently. Actually, the method I'm showing here and highlighted, Oracle Aura DB18 Home TNS Listener. This method is automatic. Okay, means startup type is automatically means whenever the system gets enabled or gets on and available in the environment, so this services gets automatically invoked and started. Okay, so on that case what happens, like whenever this service gets started, you can say like database communication started. Until this service is starting, we would not be able to connect to the database. Okay, so we will be required to have this service on a running mode, running status. If it is like this being on a stopped or in not in active and running status, so there would not be any like connection establishing between the database and system. Okay, so if we are getting this kind of pop-up, so what can we do? We can go on the service portal, like we can open the cmd clear and write services.msc and go to the Oracle Ola DB18 service and just make it start. Click on write and click on the start, and after starting the service automatically started running, and once it started running, so you guys would be able to connect to the database. Okay, so I faced this issue two times today only, so I thought like it's something kind of common issue, so we should share with you all guys. Okay, so I think this issue is only persisting with 18 Oracle 18c, because earlier I was using 12c and I did not face any issue, it was working properly. Okay, so this might be the 18 issue or something happening because of Windows 10 update. Could be any reason, but I found, so I discussed. So next we are going to create stored procedure. So let's go to the database. Okay, so you can see here I already have created the stored procedure, so that we don't need to spend a lot of time here to make these changes. So how we can create, I'm just explaining you. Just right click here in the procedure, in a new procedure, whatever the names you want to give, like CRMS, I given CRMS, you can give CRMS test. Okay, and what are the input and output parameters you want to pick. Okay, so you can pick the input output parameters here. So for our requirement, so we will be having us, let's see what be required. Where is entity? This entity is here. Response is user. So basically we are capturing these details in a table. Okay, user table. So what we will be doing, we will be getting these details from the users, and based on these details we'll be creating the users, and whatever the latest user id is available in the portal, we will be returning that id. Okay, so we'll take these details, create new user id, and we'll return that user id to the user. Okay, so this would be going to be our requirement. So these details are going to be as an input parameter, and this user id is going to be a output parameter. Okay, so 4 5 fields would be in, and whatever out we can make it out here. Okay, and the type we can change here, number, date, whatever is appropriate for our key field. Okay, so this way, and we will click on the save, the procedure will get created. Okay, so on the very first time when the procedure gets created, you guys would only be see this thing, like parameters, in and out parameters. So you can see here first name, last name, country, all are in parameter, and user id is out parameter. Okay, so what I written over here, I just telling you. I hope you guys are understanding basic scripting of Oracle. Okay. So what I'm doing here, like you can see, we have a user id as an out parameter. So I'm selecting maximum user id, okay, from user details table, and 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 increasing it plus 1. It means, like, if we have already 6 user present in our user table and their maximum id is 6, so what will be the next id? It's going to be, so like, I think the next id should be a 7. 7 is max user id plus 1. Okay, so that's the same thing I presented here. Okay, so I can show you the same thing. See currently how much records are there. See, so currently user ID is the 5 is not there, 6 is there, and 7 is there. Okay, so max user ID is 7. Okay, so what should be the next user ID? It should be 8. Okay, so I did the same thing. You can see here max user ID plus 1. So it will return the same thing. Let's see, 8. So max user id, max function is returning max of this column. Okay, and we are adding plus 1, so max of this column is 7, plus 1 is 8, so 8 is returning over here. So 8 is coming from this query and getting inserted into this field, user id field. So what I am doing here, like, I have created one insert script. Okay, insert into user detail table, user id, first name, whatever the fields we are getting, I put here. And in place of user id, what I put here, user id is here, you can see. this user id. So this might be create a issue, I don't know, but I did not check this procedure yet. So if it is creating issue because this user id and this user id name is same, so what can we do? Just make some changes here, put the underscore and put the new something, then so that it can be unique and cannot create a conflict with this parameter and this variable. Okay, so currently let's test with this query. If it is not working, then we will be definitely making a new variable, means changing the name of this variable. So not required. So let's create, like we have create one more name like Sachin. Okay, so Sachin, what is less than Tendulkar, country India, while could be anything. It can also be anything. It's a variable, so it will accept package ID's number also. It will also not accept, like if you made this mobile number each number here. So if you're trying to put some A or B something, so it will give us an error. You can see like wrong format. Okay. So you also need to take care, like if you have given the number here, so it will only accept the number. So we given, let's execute it. So it's completed. Let's see Sachin is there or not. You can see Sachin is inserted here with the 8 user ID. Okay, so means our procedure is working properly. Stored procedure which we created, CRMS SP underscore insert underscore user details, it is working properly. Okay, so now what the next is, next we need to connect this stored procedure with our post action method. Okay, so let's yeah. So firstly, what we need to do, like we need to create a separate request and response for our create user, create CRM user. Okay, so let's create a request and response. So firstly, we need to create a request. It's a request class. Create user request. Okay, I'm just creating it. It's created now. So we need to take all these fields. So let's copy this field as it is and make it public. And put the field here. So we require the same field, so don't need to put all the fields again and again. I removed user ID because user ID going to be output parameter, means it's coming as a response. So we will also need to create one more class which is user response. Create user response. So the next is going to be create user response. Okay, that is coming under response folder, making this public. So we don't need all of this, we only need of user ID. So it's showing you like we will be taking this parameter as an input, this first name, last name, country, mobile email ID, package ID, and after getting input we will be putting those data into the database, extracting the user ID and sending user ID as a response. Okay, so both of these things have been created. So let's remove it. Actually it's creating a new type of project reference. Okay, we need to keep this only entity namespace. So let's go to our controller, user controller here. So we would have some structure post method. Yeah, this one is here. Let's copy it. Okay, so don't need of this. HTTP post public void is not that means uh, what we are going to take as a request, create user request. Okay, and what would be going to be name of it, create user request. That's fine. Okay, and what is going to be a response, create user response. Okay, and the name of it you can see, create CRMS user. Okay, it looks something different, otherwise all things become same. So it's giving us an error because not all it's not returning the value. Okay, so what we are going to return here, response. For the time being, ABC equals to new create response, return, we are going to return ABC, so it will not give us an error. So a post method is here. We also need to put the route here, otherwise it will not be visible in Swagger. Route will not get created for that. So we are not like sending anything in, like we given this ID slash like API name slash ID, because in this way like we can run this query without taking a request body. Like we just can just create this query string and put on a browser and response will get created. There should not be any error. But in case of like create user, we cannot just run the query string. Okay, we would need to have a request body. Without request body we cannot insert the user, because we are not only making the changes in databases, we need to go with some data, and whenever we require some data to make any changes into the database, so on that case we will must require a request body. Okay, so the API should be this way. So API name is only here. Okay, and the request body is this, create user request. Okay, so this create a user request and this is the response. So and it is returning in this way. So next we need to create the same class in DL then BL. Okay, so let's create in BL first. Where is the BL? Firstly here task. Okay, so what is the name is create CRMS user. Okay, what is taking as an input, create request, create user request, create user request. Okay, and what going to be the response, create user response. Okay, and the same we need to implement in detail. public async pool. So what is the output? Create user response, create CRMS user. Okay, and what is going to be a request? Create user request. Okay, and the request is this. So we will be sending the request to this. Okay, it is not taking as an input right now, keeping us error. Same we will need to create the method in DL as well, so that it can be available for DL also. Change this create CRMS user. Okay, so it is already created here. The same we need to implement here. It's already given, so we can also make the implementation. Implement interface. This will automatically create the method, you can see. Okay, so we can also do this. It's not a deal here, DL. So we need to do this in above that we can track it properly. Okay. So in this case, what we need to do, it's not going to work. So what we need to do, create user response, new, create user response. Okay, so we need to return this response as a return parameter, bool result. Okay, so it is not going to be work. Yes, it's a bool. So new method we need to create. Okay, so what is going to be the matter? So create users, create user CRMS user async. We can say CRMS user async. Okay, so this user what will take, this user will take request as an input parameter. Okay, control B, request as an input parameter. The same request will also pass here and create user sync. This is going to be the method. So we don't need to give this method in bool. What we'll do, we will send this method. Okay, here. So what is going to create user response is also create user response is going to be the response of this method. Sync. should be a same call here. Okay, so this my creative CNC will get call, and afterward this is not required. So in this method will get called from here, like this method, and this method is taking creative user request as an input parameter. Okay, so all thing is proper, no doubt, but here we will making some changes. We will call our stored procedure. What is the name of our stored procedure? Let's copy from there. CRMS SP user details. Okay, this is, and we also need to add parameters. So this parameter name and the name we declared there should be the same. Okay, so here is the, if we are adding first name, so first name and that first name should be the same. Control V, first name. Okay, this is not an integer, this is varchar. Varchar to, yes, this one. Okay, and what is the first name is dot first name. No, not connection string. Request dot first name. Okay, and the system dot data something. Data. Okay, so this is for the, why we are doing this, like before calling up the stored procedure we will need to declare for the parameters, like whatever the input parameters we are giving. Okay, so all other explanation I already given, but this is the new one. Like instead of giving the inline query, we are calling the stored procedure, and whatever the parameters required, input and output parameters, we will be sending here through the parameters command. Okay, so let's make the changes for all. Okay, let's see how many parameters are there. Okay, so first name, and what is the second parameter is the last name, and here is also, there should not last name. Okay, and the third is country, so the last name, country, and that should also be country. Mobile, and this is integer, so it is going to be int 32. Okay, this is going to be mobile. Okay. Email, so email is also varchar2, value is coming from the email. Okay, each input parameter after email is package id. Package id is integer 32. Integer 32. There should also be some number kind of thing, but I think integer 32 is good. package ID. Okay, so these all are input parameters. Let's create one more which for output parameter. Control B, and what is the output parameter name is user ID. Okay, user ID is 32. Okay, just make the change in direction. It's going to be a output. This is not required. Only two parameters is enough, I think. Yes. Okay. So we have given one to all personal okay parameter, and after execution, we only required to have um, user ID, but I'm not seeing the user ID here. Okay, that's the only thing is required. Let's remove all this thing. Let's see what's coming in. Coming in here. Based upon that, we will just check. So, create user response. We need to create here. B control B. Okay, so user dot user dot user ID is user dot user ID is required. Okay, user ID and what the value is coming here, and that response is returning here. User does not exist in the current context. Okay. So what we need to do, we don't need of this here, we can declare here. Okay, response is declaring as a user detail. So removed it, put here user detail, remove this one, and instead this, return user detail. Okay, remove this. This is the query we created. Okay, so let's connect all the API calls. So here we just returning, so let's make this be delete this await dot create CRMS user, and the request is this request. Okay, so sync is required definitely. Okay, so let's go to the implementation. Here this is for this one, create CRMS users. Okay, and for this also, like create CRMS users, a sync request is already sending, so this is fine, I think. Go to the implementation for this one. We are coming on the DM. Okay, so create CRM user sync this method, so this is properly mapped. So let's put the debugger here, and okay, run. Let's see what is coming out. Yeah, it's loading up. Yeah. So do we have, yes, so this post method is coming. Okay, so this is our post method. You can see the format, request body format. Just try it out. Fill the values. First name, like this time I'm giving Akshay Kumar. Okay, last name is Kumar. Country India. Okay, mobile is email id ak@gmail.com. Okay, and the package id we can say 112. Okay, let's execute it. Yeah, it's coming to direct our database call. Let's see, is it working properly? Yeah, connection is open, so we are good. All things coming. Some exception is coming here. Let's see what is coming. Invalid SQL statement. Okay, so I think command text, this is not the statement. So for the SP I think there should be some different parameter name. Command type. Yeah, so firstly we will need to give the command type. Okay, then cmd dot text command text equals to this. Because we did not specify the name of this. Command type dot stored procedure. Okay, so this will actually tell this communication that this, we are not going to use the inline query, we are going to use the stored procedure. So that we also need to include. Let's run it again. So we are getting errors. Okay, try it out again. Oh, so this time it's taking. Okay, so we are not giving anything type, so it's by default understanding like it's a inline string. See, it's been executed properly. Oh, so no user details is coming this time, I think. User id is not coming, but let's see in database whether it is inserted or not. Akshay Kumar is here. You can see 9 id, everything is inserted properly here. Okay, so means our insertion is also working properly. Just insert each response is not mapping. Okay, this is no. Yeah, so our post method is working properly, no issue with that. So the only thing is remaining, like insertion is happening properly, but what are the responses coming here? Like I think reader is not getting anything. We need to see that what reader is getting, and based upon that, like we need to map the user id with actual user id with that value. Okay, so what can we do? We can again run it once again and check for the response. So instead of Akshay, this time we are making Shahrukh, okay, and Khan. Let's see what is coming there. I'm just not understanding what is coming here in reader, okay. So whenever the response is coming in reader, then we can see where the user ID is. Just quick watch Shift F9 where user ID is. So currently nothing is coming, no result. No problem. Let me find out it. I will find out it and show you in next video. Okay. So in the time I think this our query is working properly and we are successfully inserting the details into the database. Okay. So let's see if Farouk is inserted or not. Yeah, you can see Farouk Khan is also inserted. Okay. So it's working properly. So we created a stored procedure also. So actually stored procedure. So stored procedure, what are the stored procedure that we need to understand also. So actually instead of putting inline queries inside the solution, okay, that makes a lots of dependency in the solution. Like if any user wants to make some changes into the database part, so every time he needs to make the changes and deploy the create the new build and deploy the solution again into the production environment. And we should avoid the like frequent deployment into the production because it hampers the like users, real-time users. Okay, so that the solution is, we can say, like instead of putting inline queries, we can create query in some text files and we can execute that text file as an stored procedure. Okay, so we can say like a stored procedure is kind of SQL file, okay, which is containing some SQL queries, and whenever we like pointing that SQL queries, so it automatically gets executed. So whenever the next time if we are pointing the like SQL file instead of inline query, so whenever we require to make some changes in SQL query, so we don't need to put the inline query changes. Okay, we can just make the changes in that SQL file, which is so-called stored procedure, and whenever the changes updated, so it automatically gets reflected to the application. Okay, so that is the advantage of using the stored procedure. So you can see like it is just nothing but the group of SQL statement that accepts some input the form of parameter and some perform some task and may or may not return the value. Okay, so this time our registered procedure is not returning value, but it obviously we can make the changes and make the stored procedures to make some returnable value. Okay, like cursor and output parameters and something. Okay, so stored procedure is good thing. You can also explore some more knowledge about the stored procedure. It's a vast thing, and definitely we have a lot of tricks and things to learn about the stored procedure. So you can explore, and if you're having any doubt, you can ask me. I'm available. Okay. Okay. So see you on the next video. Thank you so much for the watching.